Who's out there right now? Let me see. Got two. We have time. Hey guys, if anybody's out there, just chime in, let me know. Let yourself be known in the chat. Well, it's telling me, the system is telling me that I have an excellent connection this time. So if you're listening right now, let me know if you can hear me okay. And if not, Martin. Did I pronounce that correctly? Martin. Albers. Good to see you, man. Thanks for chiming in. I'm going to try this system again. And get rid of these. It's getting in my way. I do see the test video pausing every few seconds. It could be, I've asked my son, oh great, thanks man. I've asked my son to stay off his gaming. He may not be off it yet. But we'll keep monitoring things. Excuse me. Everything good so far. Thanks, brother. Appreciate that. That's good. We're almost ready. Make things happen here. Note to everyone who wants to stream, however easy anybody says it is, I think fundamentally it is, but there are these minutiae of details that seem to separate a very high quality stream that you've probably seen elsewhere from, just get this piece of software, get this piece of equipment, connect it all together, put it up on YouTube in your streaming. It's not quite like that. It's a little more challenging. Kevin's back. Good to see you again, Kevin. Thanks for chiming in again. Sorry about yesterday. For those of you that were not here, we can start, that were not here yesterday, the system just kept on glitching out. I didn't see it on my end, but people were commenting on it at their end. And we've troubleshooted all day long as many of the possible things that could be causing that. And outside of investing a couple of $1,000s into high-level encoders in order to stream really, really well, which I can't do yet, this is what we've got to work with. So it's all good. Okay, I'm going to get started. I'll just let people chime in as they feel comfortable with. And once again, we're giving this a number 2 shot. Todd's back. Awesome, buddy. Good to see you. We're going to try this again, and I'm going to go over the same material that I did yesterday, because I think at least several of my hardcore students who like to hang out with me just couldn't stay on the line. It was too off and on. And I hope it's not looking that way right now. And by all means, feedback to me. Jerry's back in. Good man. Let me know if the stream is relatively better than yesterday, even though anything can still happen because we're live. Right? This is the nature of it. So I'm going to forget about yesterday. I'm going to learn from it the best I can and move on, because I want to continue being able to do these live things with all you guys and basically feed as much good information to you as I can about the things that you want to cover in the long term. And so this is going to get better and better as I get more comfort with it, obviously. It's all new to me. I did it, for those of you who have been around a while, I did a stretch of them on Facebook, but that's a very easy setup. And the stream still wasn't the best that I was hoping for. So right now I'm running it through a software encoder, and audio's good, video's choppy. Yeah, I mean, it's telling me on my system here that I have a really good connection. What happens when it leaves here, I probably don't have much control over, and that may happen. But at least, yeah, thanks, Todd. He's saying it's much better today. So we have to go with much better than just it's perfect. Perfect requires bucks. The big broadcasting systems have the bucks to be able to do this stuff seamlessly. I've seen it being done. It's really cool. I'm just going to double check here, and then I'm just going to stop talking technology. As much as I kind of like technology, right now it's a pain in the butt. So that looks good. That looks good. We're streaming. We're good. Video and audio. Okay. All right. Let's go with that. All right, folks. Well, welcome. Steve Dempster, Dempster Guitar Studio. And we are going to cover the topic tonight that we did last night. Hey, Joanna. Good to see you. And that is because I got this question a lot from people, and have been for quite a while. How is it that when you're playing some chords in some progression that you were interested in doing, that some people, when they play those chords, they sort of get away from them for a moment and insert these little licks? If you recall, some time ago, I did a full blog lesson on this topic, but only using single notes. And the same principle will apply here as it did there. Other than here, we're using two notes just to beef up the sound a little bit, make it sound a little cooler. And that's what I want to cover tonight. And just like I did last night, there are 6, I'm calling them perspectives. I could probably boil it down to really just one perspective, but I'm just going to say there are 6 points of view that I want you to think about to be able to do this. Here's the thing. Hey, Carolyn, good to see you. This process, as with anything that you're interested in getting better on in the guitar, even though there's a technical side to it, which your hands have to be able to do, and that takes some training. Really, the important thing is a certain mindset. And the mindset should always be, at least this is what was valuable for me, and I want to share it with you. The mindset has always been, if I understand the basic principle of the concept that I'm looking at, once that's really clear in my mind, then the execution of it is just a question of time and repetition, practice, rehearsal. And you can't get away from that aspect of it. However, it may feel slow at first, obviously, and then you'll pick up some tempo, some speed with it, and then it might plateau out, and you start to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm getting nowhere with all this time I'm putting into things. And then it might even feel like it's falling off. And then if you stop at that point, of course, to recover is going to require a lot of effort on your part to get back to where you were. So the trick is to kind of get to a cruising level and stay there, because then you're ready to go up should you need to, and if you dip a little bit, it won't take much energy to get back to cruising. That's a mindset. And so when those little gremlins come in and start talking to you, saying things like, this is too hard for me, or I'm not used to thinking about guitar this way, or my fingers are too fat. A lot of people tell me that. They come up with all kinds of reasons why it shouldn't work. I'm just going to try to encourage you not to do that, even though I know there's a portion of it that's natural. When you get the basic principle behind any idea, the rest of it is just you executing that on your time with maybe a long or short-term goal for you to get better at it, and then integrate that into what you already know. And you just keep repeating, rinse and repeat that whole process. And before you know it, you've kind of gotten good at playing the guitar. Everybody's different, of course, with the process, how long it takes. And look, hey, let me tell you this, and then I'll shut up and I'll actually do some teaching here. Let me tell you this. When it comes to soloing or putting in licks, I am absolutely no guru at it. As I was learning guitar as a young man, it was clear to me that the rhythm side of playing was the easier part for me. It made sense to me for whatever reasons. When the solo section of a song came in, or playing little licks in between chords came along, I was useless. Absolutely useless. In 5 years of formal guitar instruction in my teenage years, I knew 2 types of scales, the major scale and the minor scale. I knew absolutely nothing about minor pentatonics, major pentatonics, and a whole host of other possible scale structures. So I had very, very limited understanding of how anybody plays licks or does soloing on a guitar. So what did I do? I said to myself, bad self, you better get yourself better at that. So all of it that I've been doing, I've done just on my own. Nobody's taught me how to solo. People have given me advice on soloing, but there's been no formal teaching of it. Now, here's the thing. I think because I struggled with it, I'm pretty good at breaking it down to help people who don't generally do it get a grasp of it, because I had to get a grasp of it. The rhythm side, not so much of an issue, but where do you grab these notes? How do you know what ones to hit? Which combination of notes? Should I start on a certain one and end on a certain one? What are the rules? All of this stuff went on in my head as well. As time went on, a lot of that stuff didn't actually matter. As you get comfortable with the basic concept, you will free yourself up enough to explore the concept, and then the soloing and the lick playing and putting them in between chords all becomes kind of a second nature thing. And of course, I'm not going to be able to put you in that position in one session here this evening, but I can at least introduce you to the possible ways somebody might be thinking when they take on the task of leaving the chords and putting some little interesting stuff in between chords to make the whole tune that they're playing sound a bit cooler. That's why I say it's a mindset. You have to have certain things in here going on that your audience obviously doesn't see. They don't know that you're doing that. So keep that in mind. Okay, let's get on with the business at hand. We are talking about, or I am talking about, putting licks in between chords. This is the backing track, or a portion of the backing track. I'm going to play it. You can access this under the video in the notes section there. Hopefully you can hear that okay. You can access that. Just click on the link. It's free. I'm not asking you for anything. Just get it. And here's what it sounds like, and I'll use this a lot this evening. It just does this. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what it does. I might embellish it. Now, excuse me. Here's the part I want you to pay attention to. Check this out. Right there, where that chord lingers, and then I start again. It's during that lingering phase where you have an opportunity to leave the chord. Yes, unless you have somebody else playing, you're going to have to leave that chord and then get on to the licks at hand and then get out of the lick in time to play that first chord again. That begins the whole process. So there is a timing issue involved in this, and there is a rhythmic issue involved in it. For those reasons, all I really want you to do is don't feel compelled to have to go and grab the greatest array of notes that are available to you to overdo it, so to speak. Just grab a few, maybe in the area of this lingering chord, and there's tons of stuff there. But if you don't know it's there, then you don't know what to hit. So I'm going to help you know what's there. So while that chord is lingering, theoretically, you're going to get off of it, you're going to play some stuff, and then you come back into the first chord of the whole production, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's get into the perspectives that you're going to need to get you through this. You know, if you've been working with me long enough, when I introduce these types of perspectives, scales in this case, I get you doing them linearly for two reasons. One is it helps you see the structure of the scale much more easily, the interval structure of the scale. And secondly, it gives you an opportunity to make stuff up using that scale without worrying about the technical ability to flip around different strings, which you can do as well. But I'm not as focused on that. That's really a separate skill set. Just to be able to grab the individual notes and make stuff up. So the very first principle is this chord progression, 1, 2, 3, 4. Just go over that again. And I'm not expecting you to play this. Because you have a backing track for it, which you can get in the notes underneath the video. You also will have access to all the charts that I think would be useful for you to have underneath the video as well. So feel free to download those. Which is what I'm looking at. I'm doing all this, as you can see here. I've got them in front of me. So the very first thing, that progression is in the key of C. Like I've said many, many, many times, when somebody says to you, we are playing in such and such a key, certain things need to pop into your brain as a musician. It's not just hearing that somebody said, oh, we're in the key of C. What the bleep does that mean? It's giving you startup information about the sort of the overall picture of the song that you're about to do, whether you're improvising it or playing somebody else's work. It gives you information about what's available to you to play your licks with. So what's available to you if I say we're playing in the key of C, the very first thing that should come to mind is that the C major scale should pop into your head. I'm not really concerned about where you choose to play it on your fretboard, but that you can play it, period. And ideally, you can play it effortlessly. You don't have to think it through. You can go right to the fretboard and you can see one or two or multiple places where this thing can happen. What I'm asking you to do, what I always do, is get you to do it on one string. So I'm just going to do it on the second string, and I'll play it out, and many of you would go, yep, I already know that, but this is for those of you that may not be familiar with it. So here I go. C starts off the scale. Second note of the scale moves to a D note, 2 frets up. How do I know that that's a D? For now, I'm going to say I've been there so many times, I just know it by heart. I've thought about it. The second reason I know it's a D is because somebody named Steve told me, I'm pretending not to be me now, told me that in the musical alphabet, the distance from a C note to a D note is always 2 frets. And for some reason, that's stuck in my brain. I know it. It's a good thing. And that's true anywhere on the fretboard, and it's true for every instrument on the planet. Not in terms of frets, obviously, but for them, they would refer to it as a whole tone. We're going to call that a whole tone or a tone. Or you can see it as 2 frets. That we can be very visual about it as guitarists. So C to D. D to E is 2 frets. Same reason. E to F, always side by side. E to F, always side by side. All over the fretboard. Anywhere there's an E, F is right next door. E to F. 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 It's everywhere. This is a basic principle. If you don't have that floating in your brain, then you're not on a great path to being able to figure out the licks that you want to play in between your chords. Okay, C, D, E, F. F to G is 2 frets, or a tone. G to A, 2 frets. A to B, 2 frets. And then B to C, 1 fret. B and C and E and F are those unique ones in between. All right? That thing should pop into your brain the moment I say to you, hey guys, let's go and do a jam in the key of C. And if that can't happen, without a little clam mistake that I just made there, that's okay, it happens to everybody. If that doesn't happen in almost a natural, intuitive way for you, that's something you need to work on as a basic principle. If you choose to skip it, of course you're free to skip it. By the way, when I say basic principle, I mean it from 2 points of view. That you see it as individual notes that you know located on the fretboard, and you also see it as distances between the notes, which we call the interval formula, interval scale formula. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. You probably heard me say that a gamillion times, and you're probably tired of me saying it. But only you know whether it's drilled in or whether you're just familiar with the idea. You've got to drill it in. Eventually, you'll drill it in across strings in many locations. It's up to you how good you want to be at it. We're doing it on 1 string for now. So that thing is perspective 1 or concept 1. You need to know that like it's nothing. And of course, we have 12 different keys. So I wouldn't say everybody needs to know to do this in all 12 keys, because that's a lot of work. There are career musicians, of course, that will practice this stuff in all 12 keys, but they're in a different situation. For the recreational players among us, if you get it really well understood in one key, you will be able to translate it into the other keys with less struggle than otherwise you would experience. And that's what I mean by get good at one and see how it unfolds in another location. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know in the chat, because I haven't seen any comments coming in. Just if things are generally pretty stable, if the video's clicking out or the audio's clicking out, and more importantly, can you tolerate it if it is? Just let me know. Okay, number 2, perspective 2. I just played out the C major scale on the second string, and I started with a C note, and I ended with a C note. And any of those notes are available to me to put in as lick material. If I do this with the single string, I can play like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I can think. See how that works? I'll go somewhere else. That kind of idea. And you need to sit in your sandbox, that's what I call it. Sit in your sandbox and push your sand around, not your sound, your sand around the way that makes sense to you. In other words, you have to sit with this idea and play it, experiment with it, explore it often enough that you develop a certain comfort with it. You'll know the comfort has happened when there's nothing about it that perturbs your brain cells. You're totally comfortable with it. It's just like you're totally comfortable. Just keeps freezing a little, but it's not too bad. Okay, Tony, thanks, man. You're totally comfortable with it. And that's the important thing to pay attention to. Then you know you can start to move on to another concept. What happens too often is people, they say to me, they get bored with the idea of doing it. Well, okay, I can't control that so much. That's more a perspective of how you're viewing what you're doing rather than the thing itself. We won't go into it here. But philosophically speaking, I often say to people, and they don't like it, only boring people get bored. Ouch. Did I really say that? Because it's not the thing you're doing that's boring. It can't be. Because other people have done it, and they've excelled on the guitar. So they did something about how they approached this thing that made them stay with it until they got really good at it. And they kept repeating that process. Other people, if they get bored with it, you've got to change how you're thinking about it. There's nothing about anything that bores you. It's your reaction to the situation. That's all I'm going to say about that. It's not untrue, even though you might want to punch me right now. But you really have to decide that you can accept working on certain ideas until they settle into your bones with a fairly high degree of repetition, consistency. Work it till you deeply know it, not that you're just familiar with it. Okay, enough said on that. So we've got that C scale laid out on the second string. Let's now move to the first string, because we're talking about doing two notes at one time. Of course, I hope you realize that I can play the C major scale also on the first string. But of course, if I work my way up the string looking for a C note, I don't find one until I get to the 8th fret. Okay, if you have an electric guitar and you have enough space on your guitar, you could do this. But maybe that's too awkward on with the guitar you have to start it here. So you don't. You instead decide, I'm going to start it on the open string itself, which is what note? It's an E. Therefore, can I not play a C major scale starting on the E note instead of a C note, and then walk my way through all the notes until I get to another E? But I've played the notes of the C major scale. I just started the whole sequence on E. Hopefully that makes sense. So here's what it sounds like when I play all the notes of C starting on an E. Here it is. Now, if you're really paying attention to that, you'll realize that that is not the sound of a major scale, and nor should it be. It's using the notes from the C major scale, but the reason it's called C major is because it started on a C and ended on a C, and the unfolding of the notes in between took on a very specific interval formula. Tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. What I just played does not do that. It goes E to F, which is a semitone. Already, it's not going to sound like a major scale. F to G, a tone. G to A tone. A to B, a tone. B to C, a semitone. C to D, a tone. D to E. So the whole formulaic structure of what I just played has nothing to do with a major scale sound. So it shouldn't sound like a major scale. But it is the resources of the C major scale being played on the first string, starting with an E. I should have brought myself some water. So here's where the magic begins to happen. You start to blend your knowledge of the C major notes that exist on these two strings together. And you see them in your mind, eventually you'll hear them in your ear, and your fingers will have eventually recognized certain patterns of movement between the two, that you now have this new cluster of sound available to you to be able to play double notes as your lick material in between your chords, in this case between a F and a G in this particular chord progression. But let's do this now. We can grab the original C on the second string and then play the open E note on the first string and hit them together with your pick. That's a nice sound. From the note C to the note E in the scale, they're 3 notes apart. C, D, E. 1, 2, 3. We call it a third. There are different types of thirds, major and minor thirds, but I don't want to confuse you with that right now. The point is, you're playing between 2 notes, you're playing 2 of them as a third. That's how we talk about it. The C is going to move up to a D, and the E that you played moves up to its next note, which is F. And you put the 2 of those together, and they also make a third. D, E, F. 1, 2, 3. And that process continues to unfold as you work your way up the fretboard. You are always playing the C major scale. In one case, you're playing it starting on a C note, and in the other case, you're playing it on an E. And what you get, and this is all charted out for you, so if you're not following it right now, just take a look at the charts and that'll help clarify it for you. Here's what you get. You're combining all that information into this. Which is this thing, and this thing, just being played together. And it's a mixture of major thirds and minor thirds, but just look at it from the big picture, it's just a bunch of thirds. So now you have a tool, thirds in this case, on the first and second string, And you can do this on any string. This is the beauty of it. We're not going to cover that tonight, but potentially you can do this on every string. Very same thing, right? That's the beauty of it. And you could go, let's say here. Way up there. It's crazy what you can do. So it's everywhere. I'm just highlighting it on the first and second strings. So how would you apply it? What I would do is if the chord progression has me playing and then I end up going, while that chord's ringing, I might just want to choose some of those notes that are around where my hand is already at as a starting point. So that might look like this, and I'm just making this up as I go. I don't have anything written in front of me with this stuff. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I missed the chord. You're getting the idea. So all that's floating in my head while I'm playing the chords is that I know this thing. And I could have left this and gone here and then come back into there, or I can go and then come back into here. And all of that requires some timing and some rhythmic nuance, which are separate skills, which you get better and better at over time. I will say you get better at it quicker if you are able to hang out with people who play this way. You can pick this stuff up much quicker. If it's just you on your own, it may take a little longer, but you're still capable of doing it. You just don't have we'll call it the background pressure of the rest of the band to be sort of forcing you to find those things in the heat of the moment. And that's the real challenge here, is to find that information that you've been practicing and put it in there in the heat of the moment without the luxury of on your own thinking, oh, I just bugged that up there, I'll just find it, then go and play it, and then come back into the chord. You must kind of always pretend you're in the band, and at that moment, you got to find the stuff. Oh, there it is. You got to struggle to find it. This is how your brain is going to go, oh, that's what you want. So sitting here doing this all day can help a little bit, but it's really not a great idea. What that teaches you is where things are located in a tactful way with your hand. So that's good. It teaches your ear what it sounds like, which is good. But your ability at that moment to look down and see it live in your brain as you're playing and grab those tools is imperative. So don't trick yourself into thinking you're good at it when you have to stall to find the notes. If you're stalling to find them, you're still thinking. We've got to get it past thinking. You're going to need to decide how much rehearsal or practice you will need to do to get it to the point where you don't have to think about it so much. And it gets less and less over time, just like anything else. Okay, that's perspective number 3, combining the two streams of strings together. So let's review so far. Perspective 1 was just the C major scale. Obviously, you got to know it. Perspective 2 was realizing you can play the C major scale on any other string, and you don't even have to start on a C. Just as long as you adhere to the notes that are in it, you'll be good to go. And then the third perspective was, or is, why not just blend the two together and you have a pool of sound. What is it I'm thinking of? You could make stuff up, and oftentimes as you're doing it, a song will come to mind that what you're doing reminds you of. And you go, oh, and I'm kind of doing the same thing. That's kind of a cool experience when it happens. But it requires you to kind of spend some time with the thing and then combine things in new ways. Not just do this. You do it, you have to, but then make it constructed into something musical. You know I've said this over and over and over. You have to be able to step outside the scale structure and make some music with it. That kind of idea. And you just have to do it. You keep doing it. Okay. How am I doing so far? Sheila came in a little late, but here now. Good. I know Tony said there's a bit of freezing going on with the video. Hopefully it's not as bad as it was. We worked long and hard today to try to get all the glitches out. I'm hoping it's paid off, even though there are a few that are occurring. We'll continue to get better at this together. So thanks, guys, for being patient with me on this. Okay, let's go to the fourth perspective. This one is probably more familiar to you. I'm playing a chord progression in the key of C. I'm not going to explain this right now. Some of you may already know it, but there is the relative minor scale that is present for every major scale that we have in our musical system. And I'm saying it that way, this is where it can get a bit tricky. I'm saying it that way because I believe the majority of guitarists out there, you guys included, are probably mostly familiar with this shape of scale, to which you probably think of it properly as A minor pentatonic. You're not wrong, but you are also playing at the same time C major pentatonic. I don't know how many of you are aware of that, but here it is. And it will be exactly the same shape. It's an interesting idea. Here's A minor pentatonic, starting on A. And you can probably agree it goes very well with an A minor chord. I'm trying to stay aware of how the connection is doing here. Still telling me it's an excellent connection, so I have to go with that. Now, that's if I start on A. If I start on C, which is its relative, Tony's got it, good. If it's its relative major, and if you don't know that idea, I'll talk about it in another session with you guys, just to get you up to speed on it. Here's the sound of C major pentatonic, and it looks exactly the same. It's just I'm starting on a C instead of A. It almost has a more happy major sound to it. Kind of folkish, cowboy-like. The point is here that you could use that little resource because it's both C major pentatonic, which is related to C major, I'll explain that in a second, and it's A minor pentatonic, which is also related to C major. Everything's connected, folks. This is the beauty of it. You're not just picking up one notion and trusting that it's true. Everything is connected. And I know I'm not exploring that connection very specifically right now, I just need you to accept that it's true, that you already know this stuff. If I went through the notes of that scale, you would find that the only notes that exist are part of the notes that exist in C major. They're all natural notes. You have A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G, A, C. There are a few notes missing, namely the B note and the F note from the C major scale. Okay, so that means, for now anyway, I could take this little tool and use it mentally in my mind as my source of notes, note or notes that I could place licks around or make licks out of in between the chords. So check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. See how cool that sounds, right? You can blend all of that together with all of the C major scale stuff because there's a connection between your familiar A minor pentatonic thing and C major. Namely, they're all natural notes. And they're connected by this thing called the relative minor, relative major relationship. If you know this ahead of time, you now have another pool, in a sense, a relationship of the notes to one another that you might find give you a sound that you like. Therefore, it doesn't sound as... Some people say that almost has sort of a Spanish sound to it. Whereas this doesn't have that sound. It's something else, and that's cool. So we want variety available to us. So the key here is within the, I'll call it A minor pentatonic, but I do want you to think about it as C major pentatonic. Excuse me. Again, I need my water. C major pentatonic with two notes missing. C major with two notes missing creates C major pentatonic. Take out the F, take out the B. So the connection is very strong between the two, which is why you can rely on it. So again, why don't you just hit two notes? You can see these connections all over the place within the scale shape. It's really cool. All of those notes are open and valid to hit as double notes or double stops, we call them. How's my time? Okay. And your job, again, is to blend your knowledge of that scale with your knowledge of C major in the sandbox. You can't continue just to always wait for people to show you something to do. That's always going to happen. But that is not the means by which you get good at this stuff. You have to be willing to sit with it at home with a cup of tea for 20 minutes or half an hour, often throughout a week, and teach yourself to move in and out of some chords, we're staying in the key of C, and apply these perspectives to your little solo attempts. Again, there is timing involved and there is rhythm involved. Don't get hung up on that right away. Your stuff might sound like this as you're listening to the available backing track. You might do this. You're not playing the chords, by the way. And then you might go, and then all of a sudden the progression's back to where it was, and you might have realized I finished my little thing too early, or I wanted to play more and I didn't have enough time. That's the rhythmic stuff you have to play with kind of on your own. It can all be written out so that you do it perfectly. But hey, you don't have to tell me. The vast majority of guitarists don't want to read music. They don't see a need for it. There is a perfectly good need for it. It's most of us, Tony. I get it. It's most of us. We do that. But that's how you learn. You mustn't walk away from that little moment. Again, I'll just demonstrate this. I think this is an important point here. I always have something extra to add when I think of something I need to do, and I'll just throw it in here. The challenge for someone in my position, and I'm not boasting about it, but if I am to be thought of as something of an expert at some aspect of playing guitar, in the process of becoming that over time, we, the so-called experts, lose sight easily of what it took to get there because we've been doing it for so long. And then when we come to try to teach it, our brain is already by default so full of many little bits of minutia that we know should get expressed to you, the student, but we forget to do it because it's coming out of us now so easily and instinctively, and we're sitting here going like, why can't they get this? What's wrong with that person? It's got nothing to do with the person. It's the teacher. The teacher has long since forgotten all the different levels of minutia they had to struggle through to be able to get good at it. I think I'm generally pretty good at identifying the minutia that you need to be thinking about, and I enjoy exposing it for your benefit, to let you know and remind you that we were, teachers, players, advanced players, we're all where you are. Even though you hear this all the time and you go, yeah, but you're special. We're not. I worked on it hard. I did so when I was younger so that I just enjoyed it, and I'm benefiting from it now because I've had lots of time to use it. So there is a place for if you start when you're a little younger and then you do it, you have more time to cultivate it. But the time it takes to cultivate it is not years. In general, it's usually a handful of months. And if you're focused on it well enough over 2 or 3 months, your brain's going to get it if you can do it. I guarantee you, the studies show that when you want to adopt a new skill set, 1 to 3 months of focused work on that particular skill with not too much divergence away from it, you've got to stick with it, is what it takes for your brain to really comprehend what's going on. So, when your teacher shows you something and you go away and work on it for a week or two and you're not seeing results, you have no reason to complain. You shouldn't even be talking about your struggles until well after the first month of working on it. It takes, I hate to say it, it takes time. I wish I had the pixie dust. I could just sprinkle over it for you and make it magical. Okay, back to my point. Here's what you might now sound like incorporating the C major scale material and the A minor pentatonic material together if you were to use that in your soloing brain. So here I go. 1, 2, 3, 4. C major stuff. A minor pentatonic stuff. C major stuff. A minor pentatonic stuff. So those little tools are popping in and out of my awareness as I'm thinking on this stuff, and by the timing of the music, I'm forced to find that stuff relatively quickly, usually uncomfortably quickly for the student who's just starting the process. That discomfort goes away the more you spend time in your sandbox pushing this sand around, making connections to things. Play the major scale. Come out of it, do the pentatonic thing. Play more notes from the pentatonic as two notes at once. Come out of that again. Find yourself in C major without starting on C all the time. Do you see what I'm talking about? Trying to get it all to blend, to become one thing. Instead of two or three perspectives, it all just becomes one big perspective. And this is what happens in the long term with all of music. It all just becomes one big sphere of information, none of which is unavailable to you. It's easier to get. I'm talking a lot about it in the hopes that, I'm hopefully relating to how you're thinking, but I don't want the excessive talking to be equated with complexity, because that is not what's going on in music. If music were as complex as you may perceive it to be, you wouldn't see as many people doing it out there. There's obviously an aspect to it that's very natural, very human, very normal. But when we talk about the tools of it, perhaps there's some complexity there. And it only looks that way because you're just not familiar with it yet, that's all. Okay. From the minor pentatonic point of view / C major point of view, I did tell you that to get from C major to C major pentatonic, which is the same as A minor pentatonic, I just had to pull out two notes. And the notes that got pulled out, we'll talk about this some other time, were the notes F and B. So from 7 notes, you pull 2 out and you're left with 5. That's why it's called pentatonic, by the way. When you have 7 notes, it's called diatonic. I don't know why it's called that, because that sounds like 2 notes to me. There is a lot of that fuzzy language in music that can get a bit tricky. A very quick one for you. 3 notes to a chord is called a triad, but 4 notes for a chord is called a 7th chord. It's not called a tetrad or a quadrad. It should be, but for some reason, other things just took over and the language became what it is. So there is that inconsistency. The sound of a note can be told, you can be told that it's a tone. It's a single tone. And at the same time, the word tone can be a shortened version of whole tone, which is identifying the distance between 2 notes intervallically. So there is an imprecision to the language of music that can severely damage how you're understanding things. So when they creep up, I'll try to keep identifying them for you, because it's not fair. It just makes things like, this guy calls it a tone, and this guy says, well, the whole tone is a distance between notes, but this guy says the tone is just a single sound, and it's also distances between notes. And it's the quality of sound you make when you play with your pick. Oh my gosh, I can understand why you guys could get confused. Okay, enough of that. I'm going to play the C major scale, and I'm going to pull out those 2 notes, the B note and the F note. Don't worry about why for now, okay? So here we go. We've got C, D, E. There's where F is. I'm going to skip it. And then I'm going to go to G, A. I'm going to skip the B, play the C. What's with these big words? I know, man. It's crazy. So here's the sound of it. Did you hear it? I'm going C, D, E, G, A, C. If I come back down. Now check it out. I'm now in the A minor pentatonic frame of mind, and I'm going. It's exactly the same sound. So I could take that and then reproduce the same thing on the first string, just as we did previously, and play C major pentatonic on the first string. And I would have this: E, skip the F, G, A, skip the B, C, D, E. So I have this. Sorry. All of that is sitting within C major pentatonic / A minor pentatonic. Now, if you combined those two strings, just like you did for the C major scale, you get an entirely different sound combining these notes that are available for you to play, should you want, because you know this really well with all the other perspectives in your soloing. So you would get something that sounds like this. And that's kind of cool. So now you could play 1, 2, 3, 4. Pentatonic now. I hit a bad string. It's an interesting sound. Now I'll do pentatonic by itself. Now I'll do C major stuff. Oops. I hit a bad one there. I'll do that again. You get the idea. All of these things, when you see people do that kind of stuff, they have rehearsed it. I'll say it, that they've rehearsed it to death. They know it inside and out. How prepared are you to get that good at it? You need to be willing to go into your sandbox and push that sand around and try to build a sandcastle that's just so cool and better than anybody else's sandcastle. If you don't have water, which is what we're doing today, I'm giving you the water, you're not going to be able to build anything beyond a pile of sand. You need to give it form and structure, and these perspectives are part of that structure. Okay, I've got one more perspective for you. This one to me was the coolest. Carolyn said everything sounds kind of bluesy. Big words. Todd, I understand what you're saying, but not nearly good enough yet to play it. Okay, that's a very good point. Todd is a very old friend of mine. We go way back. So just recently, he's become more and more involved in music, particularly as a drummer. And I think he wants to do guitar at some point. Yeah, Tony, I know it's timing that gives a lot of people problems, and I think that should be a topic I try to hit this week, for sure. But back to Todd's notion, people do intellectually get this stuff much more quickly. They nod their heads, at least, up and down, agreeing with me. Yeah, even if they don't get it, humans, we just do that, right? It's a polite thing to do, but let's pretend and assume that they are actually getting it intellectually, but translating that knowledge here is always slower because it's technical, it's mechanical. You have to align the knowledge with an extra layer of digital prowess, shall we say. Not only holding a pick, but if you're a fingerstyle player, you have to combine all of that with what's up here. And it takes longer. So it's a very good point. So everything people are saying in the chat, I probably would guess you think you're the only one that's experiencing this that way. You aren't. And it won't matter how many times I say it to a live student. That's normal. What you're experiencing is completely and utterly normal. Now that you know it's normal, stop complaining about it. Move beyond it, and let's just keep going, because humans are humans, and it takes time to learn this stuff. And I happen to enjoy taking the time to help people learn it. I enjoy teasing apart what it is they're not getting, and hopefully come up with a perspective on it that makes them go, oh, Now I get it. That's where I want to be able to get you guys. So keep that in mind. Okay. Rick Feltham is giving me a comment on Facebook, but I'll listen to that or watch it later. Sorry, hold on. Get back to my live stream here. Close that out. Okay. Steve Stein, go away. I like Steve, but go away. Okay. Last perspective now. This one was really big for me. I can still remember learning this. If you recall, the very first thing we did after learning the C major, doing the C major scale, we combined the first and second string notes with it. And what you ended up with is a harmonized version of the C scale. Harmony means basically playing more than one note at a time. Chords are harmony. But check this out. The high E that I played along with the C note, why can't I just take that higher E and drop it down an octave? So you have to know something about that idea. Hopefully most of you do. I have a whole series on YouTube called Where Stuff Comes From, where this language, this way of thinking and talking is there. I think it's 12 or 13 videos. You should go and check that out. And when I edit this, I'll put a card up there so you can click on it and go right to the playlist where we talk about this stuff to help you not feel out of place. But I'm going to take this E note and I'm going to not play it on the first string. I'm going to play it on the fourth string, second fret. That's an octave lower than the first E. And now I'm going to play from that E all the way up the fourth string to the next E, the notes of C major. And it does this. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. It sounds exactly the same as this. Sorry. And if I combine that with the original C major scale that I played, I get this, which to me is gorgeous. Sorry. I am playing that in what's called a hybrid picking style. I'm picking the lower note with the pick, and the higher sounding note, I'm using my middle finger to play that. That's called hybrid picking. You could just strum through the two, but you have to find a way to mute out the third string. So you could do this, which is fine. There's lots of people that do that. I'm just out of habit using this hybrid picking style. Now that's really nice sounding. So I could now do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the question is, when you see somebody play that, and you're going, how do they know where to go? They just grab a bunch of notes. I got a watery eye all of a sudden. They just got a bunch of notes they go and grab, and they come back into the chord, and it sounds gorgeous. No. All you're seeing is the tail end of a lot of work that you haven't done yet. A lot of playing, shall we say, that you haven't done yet. When you do this stuff, and you get it going to the point where you have 2 or 3 or 4 different ways you can think about finding the notes in the key of C that could be used in a creative way, to the point where it feels second nature to you, then you'll be exactly in the same position where your hero was the night you saw them on stage. See, you just never get to see the process they've had to go through to produce that for you on that lovely evening of music. You never see that. It's like a painter. Often you don't see the process of the painting, you just see the end result. If you saw how messy the process of putting the painting together truly is, you might think, this guy's not very good. Look at all these rough strokes and stuff. But when the final product does get revealed, you go, wow, it's the same thing here. So you have to do the work, and I'm happy to help you do the work. I really am. I want to be able to get you to go, man, now I'm starting to sound like I imagined I would. So we've covered essentially what I'm calling 6 perspectives. Let's quickly review. Perspective 1 is to play with this jam track, which you can download. It's in the notes below the video. It's free. No email required. I'm just giving this stuff away this week. You can play that, cue it up, download it, and cue it up on your system. And then basically anywhere you want to, you can put in a lick. But I'm suggesting between this F and this G, where the G kind of rings for a little while, there's a space there, and that was purposely designed for you to go in and do something licky in that space. But you have to get into the lick and off of it predictably on time to get back to that starting chord again. That's you going into the sandbox and using your ears and your smarts and your patience to bring it together in a musical fashion, and then maybe together, you and I can tighten that up to help you get even better and better at it. It goes to Tony's point about timing. And without timing, there really is no music. It's just noise. Once you put timing to it, people can react to it, right? They can go, oh, yeah, I feel this now. Now music is happening. You've drawn somebody in, and they're reacting to a perceived pulse, which is time. It's musical time. It's not clock time. It's musical time, right? And that's what you're looking for when you play. If anything, this is the only really good piece of advice I can give you, is whatever you play, even if it doesn't itself sound beautiful, if it's in time, people think you can play. On the other hand, if everything you play is perfectly technically executed, but there's no perception of good time in it, they don't think you can play. People at a tribal level feel the pulse of time unfold in music quite naturally. And if you violate that at some level, they don't think you're good at music. So the thing, and again, this goes to Tony's point, the thing that is probably the most important thing to work on in music, which is rhythm, timing, is probably the thing that most musicians, especially guitarists, mostly guitarists actually, avoid working on. They want to work on all the cool licks and all the shredding, for some of you that know that, and all the special techniques that make them look and sound cool, but maybe not so musical. Anyway, that's another philosophical rabbit hole I don't want to go down right now. Okay, so perspective 1 is, hey guys, we're going to do a jam in the key of C, and the band plays that chord progression out. You at least need to know the C major scale. Wherever you want to do it, you need to know it. And I mean know it, not be familiar with it. It's got to be in your bones. Doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes. I mean, you spell things wrong all the time. You're not a perfect speller. Everybody makes mistakes. Even though they know how to spell stuff, it just comes out wrong once in a while. That's going to happen. That's totally normal. Second perspective was, not only could you play the C major scale from C to C, but you can play it from any note within the scale to the same note an octave higher. So we did that on the first string, which was from E to E, and it sounded like this. Same scale, just started on E, and then I just knit the two together. I harmonized them. I harmonized the C major scale with a series of notes that are thirds higher in sound. You can play them like this, or you can hit them together, whatever you feel like doing. Third perspective, or that was the third perspective. The fourth perspective was, you already probably know this A minor pentatonic shape, but simultaneously, whether you knew it or not, you were also playing C major pentatonic. This can bug people up a bit, because how can one scale have two names to it? We'll talk another time about that. It's really just a matter of where you're focusing, but it's only those two. It's not every note in the scale will become a new name for the scale. It's only between C and A. That's it. Those two perspectives. And I'm asking you to see it from the point of view of C major, because our progression is in the key of C. And then you could use this thing that you're already very familiar with to play single notes or double notes wherever you want, but get in and out of the lick in time to come back to the chord progression at hand. So that was perspective 4. And then all we did is, once you recognize the notes that are being played, C, D, E, G, A, C, you take those notes and put them into or eliminate the F and the B from C major, and that's what you're left with. C, D, E, skip the F, C, D, E. That's what, and then C, B and C, excuse me. Talking faster than I'm playing right now. And we did that, and you came up with this kind of possibility of sound. Now, I could sit with that with the backing track and do this all day. I mean, that's a big part of doing this process. So that was perspective 5. And then 6 was just taking the very first perspective, turning it upside down. Put the higher note, the E, down an octave, and then play that combination. Very nice sound. I'm going to say in the charts that you download, on the second page, the C major pentatonic harmonized, I've connected notes together that you can play at the same time with a line, and I did do it incorrectly. I didn't do it incorrectly, but it isn't the version I wanted. So be aware that as you play through that perspective, it's image number 5, that I'm going to redesign it to get it right, and then I'll send you the correct version of it for those of you that are on my email list. For those of you that aren't, if you want to get the correct version, just send me an email and I'll send it off to you. But otherwise, if you happen to have this in front of you right now, C major pentatonic harmonized, the first two notes, C and E, are correct. G and D should have a straight line between them, as should A and E, instead of the diagonal line. And the same thing for C and G and D and A. There should be straight lines between those instead of the diagonal. It's a small thing, but it might confuse you a little bit. There you go. The ability to put stuff in between the chords is simply you recalling relationships. You've got chords that are related to one another by virtue of the key that they come from, and you have a scale that's related to those chords by virtue of the key that makes up that scale. Key and scale can be interchanged as a term. If I say let's play in the key of C, it's really synonymous with saying know the C major scale as we're about to play. And then from there, it's just a question of making other connected relationships to that C major scale that are still C major, but different views of the thing. And then you get good at drawing on these different views or perspectives in the moment. You weren't planning it, but they don't come to you quickly if you don't work on it a lot. And at some level, you have to admit, you have to find a joyful thing. It has to be fun for you to do it. So there you have it. That is one approach to harmonizing some licks that you would like to put in between chords. The process remains the same no matter what the situation is. There could be many additional perspectives we can take on it because music is big. Once you get into it, you start to realize how really big it is. But you only need to focus on a few perspectives that you use a lot and get really good at them. And then when those things get really good, then you can hunt for other ones to add into the mix. That's the process. You do not need to cover it all, and you won't. There's always more to cover, and you're just never going to get it. So accept it now and move forward from there. Do you guys have any questions for me on this stuff? Let me know in the chat box. I'm going to just skip out for about 10 seconds. And if I see some questions there, I'll be happy to spend the next little bit of time, maybe 15, 20 minutes, answering them. If nobody has any, I won't bother. But give me 1 sec. I'll be right back. Yeah, in case you're wondering, that was the proverbial had to go to the bathroom quickly, but now I'm good. Brian May, here I come. Tony. Todd said his mind got blown. Oh, that's not a good thing, or is it? Let me know what it was that blew your mind, Todd. Carolyn says, thank you. She's leaving. Todd, thanks, dude. We'll miss tomorrow, but we'll be back on Thursday. Sounds good. Is there any, I just wanted to see if you do have questions, but is there any particular topic you guys would like me to cover tomorrow? I'll work on it till the wee hours of the morning here and have it ready for you tomorrow. And I think the tech gods were reasonably good to us. No questions now. I have to sit with a bit and catch up with the first half hour. Yeah, no worries. Thank you, Sheila, for showing up. Appreciate it very much. I mean, while we're home right now and doing what we're doing, trying to keep everybody healthy, seemed reasonable to sit down and do some sessions together. So, yeah. All right. Well, I don't see any particular questions. If you do, and they come to mind, how everything goes together. Oh, yeah. Well, that's the whole... Todd just said what blew his mind was how everything is connected. Listen, have any of you been on my website lately? Go to it. DempsterGuitarStudio.com, www, you know the routine. Go to it. Check it out. You will find that the major theme of the website is to help people understand how things are connected in music. That's a rebranding of my website, and it's still a work in progress. You will see some upcoming video stuff, and more video needs to be put in for teaching purposes, but it's underway. The reason I rebranded it is because every time I work with students, I get questions about things that they inherently don't realize are connected. And it's, in my opinion, it's due to the fact that there's so much free information out here now. And I'm on YouTube, so, you know, there's a lot of YouTube people out here teaching. And they're great teachers, don't get me wrong. But there's not necessarily often enough, anyway, a connection from one video to the next, to the next, to the next. It's just, here's a topic, let's do this, and then here's this. And then you go to some other person's website, and they give you a cool idea. So the poor guitarist is getting overwhelmed with correct information for the most part, but disconnected information. And so my website, my thing, is helping you guys see how stuff is connected. Hopefully that's where the questions tend to lie. I never even thought that pentatonic stuff was related to chords or other scales. I just thought it was a thing that you learned. Well, if that's how things worked in any field, you'd be at a loss. I mean, try to study anatomy and never realize how organs are really connected to one another. You just look at an organ and go, well, that's cute. Let's move on to another one, and never ever make the connection that how one organ is behaving might affect another one from an anatomical point of view, or how something wrong with your car at one point might have an effect on something else in the car. Everything is fundamentally connected. This is how people learn the best. You get good at one idea, and therefore the next logical idea that comes up will be easier to learn and process because you already have this mastery of a previous idea. That's what I'm aiming to accomplish here. That's why I talk so much as I go through stuff. So anyway, okay, guys, look, listen, I appreciate you being here. I've taken you over time. Actually, I was prepared to do the hour and then open up the last little bit for questions. So from my point of view, I'm on time. So if you have recommendations for tomorrow's session, if you're able to make it, because I'm doing them each day of the week this week, just send me an email. You know how to reach me. And let me know, and I'll see what I can put together. Go from there. I'd rather try to respond to something that's of interest to you than me just deciding, hey, they need this. You might not, and I could be dead wrong about it, so I don't want to be that guy. Thank you so much, guys, for showing up today. I hope the experience was much better than last time. I think it was, even though there were a few still glitches going on. And love listening to your comments, hearing them, reading them in the chat. Show up tomorrow. Share it with others if you feel it's useful. I'll get this up on YouTube so you can watch the replay. I might do a bit of editing to it, put some extra information up there. But that's always available for you, and we're good to go for tomorrow. Take care of yourselves, stay healthy, and we will be in touch soon. Now go home and play in your sandbox for a while. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.